I never expected my peaceful suburban life to turn into a chilling tale of betrayal and maternal judgment. It all started when my new neighbor, Karen, steals my baby because I'm a bad mother for using formula. Here's how it all went down. The day I moved into the street of Willow Bend, I had no inkling that my life was about to become a plot for a suburban thriller. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind that made you grateful for new beginnings. I was balancing my infant son Joey on my hip as I unpacked another box labeled kitchen stuff when she first appeared. Karen, my next-door neighbor, was the embodiment of every manicured lawn and casserole recipe-swapping stereotype of the neighborhood. "Hi there! I'm Karen from next door. Welcome to Willow Bend." She greeted me with a smile that was a little too wide to be entirely sincere. "Thank you. It's quite a change from the city," I replied, trying to mirror her enthusiasm. Karen peeked at Joey, who was fussing a bit as if on cue. "Oh, precious. Breastfeeding, I hope?" I hesitated, sensing a landmine. "Well, actually, we're using formula. I had some issues with—" She cut me off with a sharp wave of her hand. No. Formula is bad for babies, dear. I raised my 3 on breast milk alone. Much healthier." I plastered on a polite smile. "Well, to each their own, right?" Karen didn't push further, but her disapproving gaze lingered on the can of formula as she eventually walked away. That should have been my first warning. The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and endless chores. Karen, however, became a constant in my life, always popping up with unsolicited advice. It was exhausting, but I chalked it up to neighborly concern, until the day she crossed an unfathomable line. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were when I did the weekly grocery run. I had just put Joey down for a nap and was in the basement tossing a load of laundry into the washer when I heard it, the front door creaking open. Panic surged through me. I sprinted upstairs, my heart pounding in my ears. The front door was ajar and Joey's room was empty. I searched frantically, my mind racing with terrifying possibilities, until I saw Karen through her living room window holding my son. She was feeding him, but it wasn't his formula. I flew out of my house and banged on Karen's door. "Karen, open up! What are you doing with my baby?" She opened the door, a picture of faux innocence. "Oh, darling, I heard him crying and thought you could use a break. And don't worry, I'm giving him some homemade puree. Formula isn't good for him, you know." My hands were shaking. "Give me my son now!" After a tense moment where I thought she might refuse, she handed Joey over, her eyes cold and judgmental. "I'm just trying to help. You should be more careful." I clutched Joey to my chest, not trusting myself to speak. That night, I installed new locks and a security system. It was the climax of our neighborly relationship, the point where I knew I had to set strict boundaries. In the following days, I avoided Karen, but she seemed to have a different plan. I would find pamphlets about the benefits of breastfeeding in my mailbox, and once, a book titled The Dangers of Formula Feeding perched on my doorstep. I decided it was time for a confrontation. I walked over to her house, my nerves steeling with every step. She opened the door, her smile faltering when she saw my determined face. "Karen, we need to talk," I started, my voice firmer than I felt. "What you did the other day, taking Joey without my permission, that was inexcusable. I'm using formula, and that's my choice as his mother. You need to respect that, and my privacy." Karen's face hardened. "I was just looking out for the well-being of the child. If you were—" "No, Karen!" I cut her off, my patience fraying. "You overstepped in a major way. It's not going to happen again." I could see the retort forming on her lips, but I didn't stick around to hear it. I walked away, my spine straight, my message clear. Karen and I had reached an impasse, and while I didn't relish the tension, I knew my son's safety and my choices were non-negotiable. The fallout from our clash was immediate. Karen became an icy fixture, barely acknowledging my existence. It was uncomfortable, sure, but preferable to her intrusive behavior. As weeks turned into months, the incident became a cold ember in the past. Karen kept her distance, and I found my rhythm as a mother, confident in my choices. Joey thrived on formula, his giggles a testament to his health and happiness. It was a silent victory every time I saw him reach a new milestone. I began to make friends with other neighbors, ones who didn't judge my parenting style. We'd chat casually as our kids played in the front yards, our conversations a mix of daily trivialities and shared experiences. The neighborhood was friendly, with people always ready to lend a hand or a cup of sugar. One breezy afternoon, as I pushed Joey in his stroller, Karen approached, a hesitant figure this time. I braced myself for another unsolicited piece of advice, but her demeanor was different. "Hey," she said, a softness in her voice I hadn't heard before. "Hi, Karen," I replied, cautiously optimistic. "I've been thinking about what happened, about what I did," she started, looking anywhere but at me. "I was out of line. It wasn't my place. I'm sorry." I was taken aback. Apologies were as rare as a full night's sleep in those days. "Thank you, Karen. That means a lot. I saw you and the other moms. how you all support each other. It made me realize that I was the one being a bad neighbor, not you a bad mother," she admitted. It was an unexpected turn, the kind of falling action that followed the high drama of our earlier encounters. "We all do what we think is best for our kids, Karen. I appreciate your apology." Karen nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "If you ever need anything, even just to vent about the sleepless nights, I'm here." "I'll keep that in mind," I said, and I meant it. From that day on, things changed between us. We never became close friends, but the animosity was gone. Karen would wave when I passed by, and sometimes we'd exchange pleasantries about the weather or the latest neighborhood gossip. I learned a lot from the whole ordeal with Karen. I learned about setting boundaries, about standing up for my choices as a parent, and about forgiveness. I also learned that community wasn't just about living next to each other, but about understanding and respecting our differences. Joey continued to grow, each day a little more independent than the last. And as I watched him play in the yard, surrounded by friends, and bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, I felt a profound sense of peace. The days of Karen watching disapprovingly from her window were over. Instead, there was a new understanding, a mutual respect that hadn't been there before. It was the casual, everyday life I had hoped for when I first moved to Willow Bend, a life where my choices as a mother were my own and where my son could thrive, formula-fed and all. Wow, what a roller coaster of a story. Karen really crossed the line, but it's great to see how things eventually turned around between her and the narrator. It's a reminder that understanding and respect can go a long way in building a supportive community. Kudos to the narrator for standing up for her choices as a mother and finding peace in her neighborhood. It all started when my 15-year-old daughter had a disturbing encounter at church. As tensions rose, a heated argument erupted, leaving me furious and shaken. But what happened next would reveal deeper family secrets and force me to question everything I thought I knew. Here's how it all went down. This is going to be a long story with a lot of backstory, but it's important for you to understand the situation. I apologize if I ramble, but this just happened, and I'm still so angry that I'm shaking. My husband and I have 4 kids, but this incident specifically involves our oldest daughter, Stella, who is 15 years old. We believe it's important for all our children to be involved in the community, so twice a month, our 2 oldest children, Stella, 15, and Owen, 14, serve as ushers at our local Catholic church alongside my dad. Their responsibilities include holding doors open for people entering the church, passing out the offertory baskets, and dismissing pews to allow people to get up and in line for communion. They do this together with my father, who is also an usher. This past Saturday was their turn to serve as ushers. My parents picked up all 4 kids and took them to church and dinner. When they got home, my husband and I were at a Halloween party. Stella texted me to let me know they were back home and watching a movie. She also asked me to send her some pictures of everyone's costumes. The next day, Stella told me that she no longer wanted to usher. She explained that while she was holding one of the doors open, an old man named Joseph, in his 80s, who was apparently very active in the church, approached her. He asked her to follow him and directed her to the main doors of the church to greet people. Throughout the encounter, he held her hand, asked about her age and relationship status, complimented her appearance while suggesting she should smile more. He then insisted that she smile at everyone entering the church, claimed he would be her boyfriend, and asked if she loved him. Stella expressed feeling very uncomfortable, but was unable to get anyone's attention for help. Additionally, he attempted to make her sit with him during Mass. After Stella shared all of this with me, I immediately called my mom to ask her what had happened because I hadn't heard anything from her, my dad, or Stella until that moment. She explained that Stella had mentioned feeling uncomfortable to my dad, who then told her that she didn't have to serve and could sit with my mom and her younger siblings during Mass. My mom informed me that she wasn't fully aware of everything that had transpired, but she knew that Stella was uncomfortable around the man. Now, on to the main part of the story. Last night, my brother came over to visit my husband for a while. While they were in the garage having a drink, my parents unexpectedly dropped by to bring candy for the kids. I hadn't spoken to my dad since I had learned about what had happened at church a few days earlier. After greeting my parents, I asked my dad if Joseph held any official position at the church. He replied with a no. I then inquired if he planned to speak to the head priest to make him aware of the situation, to which he said he would only do so if Joseph gave him any pushback. I argued that the priest should be made aware because we don't know if this is a pattern of behavior, if he has dementia or something other illness that causes him to not be in complete control of his actions or what. I just wanted the priest to be made aware so he could keep an eye out. My father argued back that Joseph is just a nice old man who got out of line because in this day, you can't be nice without it being taken the wrong way. Cue the head explosion. I told him that sweeping this behavior under the rug by just asking this old man for an apology and not saying anything else about it makes it possible for Jospe to behave this way with another girl. My father continued to argue his point and said that if he did what I was asking, the church would just prevent him from doing what he likes to do at church. I then very loudly told my dad that if being a fucking creep is what he enjoys doing, then maybe the church should prevent him from doing that, and told my parents they needed to leave. As my dad was walking out, he said sarcastically, "I'm sorry, I don't want to crucify the old man." I completely lost control, yelling at my father that I was sorry he cared more about some old man's feelings than his own granddaughter's. My brother then joined the argument, accusing me of being vengeful and trying to vilify the old man, claiming that what happened wasn't that big of a deal, all while standing just 3 feet away from Stella. I was so furious at this point that I started crying and shaking. I told my brother that he likes to act like he's the smartest person in the room, but he's actually a lazy piece of shit who indulges in conspiracy theories to justify his laziness. I called him a loser and told him to leave my house. My dad immediately went into damage control mode, apologizing for making me feel like my request was unreasonable or like I was personally attacking someone I've never even met. He promised to talk to the priest, and my mom, who was fully on my side, said they would always prioritize the safety of their grandchildren. I couldn't even look at my dad. I asked them to leave and said goodbye to my mom. I went back to the garage where my husband was and explained everything that had happened. Initially, I hadn't involved him in the conversation because I just wanted to get my family out of the house as quickly as possible. But when the argument started, I went into fight mode and didn't even think about getting my husband. He fully supports me and agrees that both my dad and brother are in the wrong. He's letting me take the lead on this since it's my family, but he will be there for any further discussions we have on the matter. So, am I asking for too much? Is it going too far to notify the authorities about what happened and vilify this man? I don't think so, but I can't understand my father and brother's perspective on this. Am I a jerk? I have an appointment with the priest tomorrow at 2. I will be going with my father because he was there, and Stella can decide for herself if she'd like to come. I will not force her. I'd like to address some of the more common comments I'm seeing. Many people have questioned why I waited for my dad to handle this instead of taking the lead and speaking to the head priest myself. I honestly thought I could count on him. I was harassed by a boyfriend in high school but never told anyone. I tried to suppress it for as long as I could, but 3 years later, I found myself in a bad situation in college, and while I wasn't harmed, it caused everything to come out. My father was beside himself. He wanted to harm the boy and felt so much guilt because he wasn't able to protect me. I honestly believed that the experience he had with me would make him act with much more urgency. Clearly, I was wrong. Regardless of that, I still should have been the one to handle this and shouldn't have waited for my dad. I also know that the Catholic Church has a poor record when it comes to sexual abuse. I love my faith and my religion, but I do have a lot of issues with the church itself. That being said, I've never been given any reason to doubt that my kids would be safe at church with my parents. They have many friends that they go to church with and are involved in youth group. I knew there was going to be some pushback simply because the initial situation happened at a Catholic church. I won't try to change anyone's mind, but I will say that my experience in the church up to this point has always been good. And I have found a lot of comfort in going to Mass, as have my children. I would never knowingly put my children in harm's way. To clarify, Stella wasn't alone at church. She was there with her grandparents, although they weren't standing right beside her the whole time. After holding the door open for Joseph, who uses a walker and couldn't open the door himself, he approached her. He asked her to follow him to another door just a few feet away to help distribute brochures for the Knights of Columbus. Stella found it a little strange, but considering that he was an elderly man with a walker and they were in church, she didn't think anything could go wrong. I understand that the Catholic Church has a poor record when it comes to sexual abuse, but the priest we met with is a good man whom I personally know. He married my husband and me, and I trust him to do the right thing. I'm not trying to change anyone's opinion about the church as I don't know what your experience has been. However, mine and my family's experiences have always been positive. Additionally, it's important to note that Joseph does not work for the church, nor does he lead any committees or volunteer organizations. He's just an eccentric old man who attends church every day and likes to be involved. So when I arrived at the meeting today, which I recorded on my phone, my father began by informing Father Thomas, FT, that during Mass last Saturday, Joseph had behaved inappropriately towards Stella, making her feel very uncomfortable. I interrupted and clarified that there was more to the situation. I proceeded to explain everything that Stella had shared with me. FT was shocked and horrified. It appears that there have been previous issues with Joseph, although nothing as serious as this. He has allegedly made statements suggesting that only members of the Knights of Columbus are true Catholics, but he was firmly reprimanded for such remarks. Additionally, he was asked to refrain from volunteering at the soup kitchen due to reports of him pressuring homeless individuals to convert to Catholicism. FT believes that Joseph clearly has some psychological problems, but there have been no prior complaints of this nature against him. My father attempted to suggest that at some point in Joseph's life, it might have been considered normal to speak to women in that manner. My mother, FT, Father Thomas, and I all vehemently disagreed and stated that it has never been acceptable for an elderly man or anyone else to speak or behave that way towards any woman, regardless of age. FT asked me what I was seeking, and I explained that I wanted to ensure the safety of all the young women in the parish and prevent any other girl from being put in the same position as Stella. I also suggested that since elderly people sometimes have their driver's licenses revoked, perhaps Joseph should be prohibited from volunteering in any capacity at the church. FT agreed to reach out to the head of the Safe Environment program in the diocese to implement additional safeguards and prevent such incidents from happening again. My mother then mentioned that my father would be speaking with Joseph, but I immediately intervened and asserted that my husband and I would be the ones to have a conversation with him. Many of you pointed out that I should not have relied on my father to address this issue because Stella is my daughter, and I agree with that perspective entirely. I refuse to let my father handle this situation and make Joseph comfortable by simply telling him not to speak inappropriately anymore. I provided FT with my business card and asked him to update me after he speaks with Joseph and the head of the Safe Environment program and to arrange a meeting between me, my husband, and Joseph. When we left the meeting, I told my parents, specifically my father, that what he did in minimizing this situation is exactly why so many women don't report things like this, and it was nothing short of sexual harassment of a minor. I told my father that he can still think Joseph is a nice old man, but that I would never be able to look at him the same way again, and I don't know if I can trust him with my kids. That was the gut punch he needed, because despite this new side of my father I'm seeing, he's always been a wonderful grandfather to all my kids. He owes Stella an apology, but she doesn't want one. She emphatically said she just wants to put this behind her and doesn't want to talk about it anymore. Regarding my brother, he sent me a non-apology apology via text this morning. It shouldn't go without saying I'm sorry for getting involved, and I wish I hadn't interjected myself in the situation. It's not my place, and I support whatever you want to do. I haven't responded because I know I will get angry with him again. I think I'll just let my husband deal with him. It is important to note that perspectives on how to handle the situation differed within the family. The protagonist felt strongly about taking immediate action and involving the authorities, while the father and brother downplayed the severity of the incident. The story highlights the challenges and tensions that can arise when family members have different viewpoints on sensitive matters. I never thought a simple costume could cause such a stir. It all started at a princess-themed birthday party where my daughter and the birthday girl unknowingly showed up dressed as the same character. Little did I know that this innocent coincidence would spark a heated debate among the parents, dividing our mom group chat. Was I a jerk for refusing to change my daughter's clothes? Here's how it all went down. I, 34 years old female, have 2 kids, 8 years old male and 4 years old female. My daughter's name is Aurora. My husband, 36 years old male, and I chose that name because it was slightly similar to my late father-in-law's name and worked well with our last names. It had nothing to do with the princess from Sleeping Beauty. Despite that, we have enjoyed that movie in the past, and ever since my daughter realized that she shares a name with a Disney character, Princess Aurora has been her favorite. Our family went to Disney World in July, and while we were there, we bought my daughter a Princess Aurora costume. She absolutely loves it and wears it whenever she has the chance. You know, 2 weeks back, Aurora's buddy from school had this princess gig for her birthday. It was a whole dress-up shindig, and of course my little Aurora, she's all about that life, dressing up, the sparkle, the whole 9 yards. So she's jazzed about rocking her fave princess getup to this party, and I'm like, why not? We get there, and would you believe it? The birthday girl herself, she's also done up as Princess Aurora. Now I'm standing there thinking, oh boy, here comes the drama. But nope, the birthday girl is over the moon. She's all, we're twinsies, and it's just pure cuteness overload. They're off in their own little world, and I'm chilling, thinking the costume thing's a non-issue. Fast forward half an hour, I'm with the other moms, just soaking in the grown-up quiet time, when the birthday kid's mom sidles up. She's like, hey, you got extra clothes for your Aurora? And I'm like, yeah, got the backup gear right here. Because let's be real, I'm always packing a spare. Kids are like adorable little mess machines. But then she drops this on me. She wants my kiddo to ditch the princess look. Something about a photographer and not wanting a clone of her daughter in the shots. Plus, she's fretting about potential jealousy over the whole shared name princess thing. Now, if the birthday girl had been bummed about the twinning situation, I'd have been all for switching outfits. But she wasn't. She loved it. And it didn't sit right with me, you know? Having my Aurora be the only one out of costume while all the other kids are living their best princess lives? Nah. So I lay it out for her. I'm polite but firm, like, I really don't think it's fair to my daughter, and all that. The mom's pushing, but I'm planted. And then the backup arrives. The other moms are giving me these nods like, you're good, and the lady finally backs down. Cut to this week, I'm at the school, picking up my crew, and who do I run into? Yep, the birthday girl's mom. She's still on about the party, saying how I ruined the whole shebang with the costume clash and how those pictures are forever tainted for her. It's a mess, man. But what can you do, right? Kids will be kids, and sometimes, so will the parents. Initially, I thought she was exaggerating, but now I'm starting to doubt myself. Our conflict has spread to the mom group chat we're both part of, and opinions there are divided. Some people believe that having two girls wear the same costume is not a big deal, while others think I should have changed my daughter's clothes. It is important to recognize that both perspectives have valid points. While the parent prioritized their daughter's happiness and felt it was unnecessary to change her clothes, the birthday girl's mother was concerned about the uniqueness of the photographs and potential jealousy. Ultimately, it was a subjective decision that depended on individual values and priorities. It is essential for all parties involved to engage in open and respectful communication to find a resolution that considers the feelings of both children and their families. When I stumbled upon a beat-up Bronco resembling my cherished teenage truck, I couldn't resist the chance to reclaim my past. Ignoring the college fund we had diligently saved for our baby, I impulsively maxed out my credit card and emptied our savings. Now, tensions rise as my wife and her family question my priorities, leaving me to justify my actions and defend the joy this Bronco brings me. So how to begin with this? I realize that on paper, I am totally the jerk. But when you dig deeper into my motivations, I'm hoping it's more of a gray area than anything else, and maybe even I did the right thing. When I was a teenager, my dad bought me a classic 1972 Ford Bronco. It was my true passion, and I don't recall a memory from high school that somehow doesn't involve that truck. Plus, my dad and I would spend hours and hours working on it together, and when we went through that father-son rough patch when I was teenager, it was always that Bronco that brought us back together. I made a huge mistake and sold the truck when I turned 19, and my dad died of a heart attack 2 months later. So while not logical, I've always felt a karmic connection between the two events. We had a baby in early February. She is our first and the light of my life. My wife is doing well, but she's back at work and she's realized that she hates all the daycares we've tried and really wants to be a stay-at-home mom, and she's still very hormonal from delivery, lack of sleep, and breastfeeding, so she's having a rough time and is angry a lot. I guess I need to say this. You know, about 2 weeks ago, I found myself cruising through the warehouse district of our little town, and there it was, a Bronco. Not just any Bronco, but one that could have been a twin to mine. At least before life and the road had its way with it. I had to pull over. Nostalgia's a funny thing. It just reels you in without asking for permission. So I'm standing there, taking in the sight of this old beat-up beauty, when the owner pops out. He's a friendly guy, sees the look in my eyes, I guess, and offers to let me peek inside. And there's this thing my dad and I did when I had the Bronco. We glued a wheat penny under the dash, our quirky version of a security measure. I lean in, heart kind of doing a drum roll. And would you believe it? My penny, my dad's penny, right there. It's actually my old Bronco. The words just tumble out of me then, asking the guy if he'd think about selling it. Turns out he's got a buyer coming up from Colorado on I-25 no less, ready to hand over $21,000. My heart's doing backflips, panic, the whole circus, and I just blurt out, "What about $23,000? Right here, right now?" And the guy, he's straight as an arrow, tells me if I've got the cash, it's mine. Now I've been dragging my feet on setting up a $529 for my daughter. She's only a tiny little thing, 6 months old, and I've got this $12,000 in savings, a generous gift from my in-laws for her future education. Without missing a beat, I'm maxing out my credit card on Venmo, and my mom, bless her, she brings down a check for $4,000. And just like that, I'm behind the wheel of my old ride, driving it back to its rightful place in my driveway. It's like living a dream, you know? A dream where you don't really consider the waking up part. Sure, it's seen better days, and my wallet's pretty much crying at the thought of the work it needs, but it's mine. It's home. But not everyone's throwing a parade for me. My wife and her folks, they're seeing red. They think I've pulled a fast one on them, that I'm not living up to this real man image they've got, the kind of guy who'd lay everything on the line so his wife could be at home with the kids. And yeah, the money was earmarked for a college fund. I get it, I do. But my little girl's got her whole life ahead of her, and we've got 18 years to sort out that college fund. This Bronco, though, it's not just a car, it's a time machine, a memory preserver, a piece of my history that I thought was gone. And now it's a chance to build new memories with my kids, just like I did with my dad. To me, that's happiness. That's irreplaceable. And if I'd let that moment slip by, that Bronco would have been nothing more than a what if in my rearview mirror. Now, it's my joy, parked right there in my driveway. And I wouldn't change a thing, like I said on paper. Jerk, whole story, gray area. How do you guys see it? I had no idea this would go so one way. I guess I messed up. I talked with my mom, and she is basically going to buy the Bronco from me in order to refill the college fund and pay off the credit card. The $4,000 will be a gift, and she's going to give me whatever I need to restore it. She's always been awesome to me, and she'd rather the money be spent now than wait for me and my sister's inheritance. Sorry to get everyone so mad at me. I was thinking with my emotions and acted badly. While on the surface, his actions may seem selfish and irresponsible, there are deeper emotional and personal reasons behind his decision. The Bronco represents a strong connection to his past, particularly his relationship with his late father. This story highlights the complexities of personal desires, family dynamics, and the difficult choices individuals face when reconciling their past with their responsibilities for the future. In the midst of a challenging relationship, my partner's sudden request to stop using the pads took a bewildering turn when I discovered he had thrown them away. As tensions escalated, secrets were unveiled, revealing a shocking betrayal. Here's how it all went down. So there I was, in my teens, when the doctor dropped the term menorrhagia on me, and let me tell you, it's as heavy as it sounds. My periods were the nightmare kind, the ones where I'm counting the minutes in class before I had to dash to the bathroom. I mean, we're talking a pad and a tampon combo, and still, I'd be on a timer. It got so bad that my middle school principal had to ring up my folks. They were like, maybe she should just chill at home when it's like Niagara Falls. And I did, because what else could I do, right? Fast forward to now, and meds have been my knight in shining armor. They've made workdays doable and cut down the length of my personal red wedding. But here's the kicker. Nights are still a battlefield. I'm up every hour, on the dot, because if I don't, it's like the Hoover Dams burst in my bed. Sleep? What sleep? I'm on night shifts, so you can imagine how precious those Z's are to me. Now, enter my game changer. Puppy pads. Laugh all you want, but with these bad boys under me, I could actually catch some shut-eye without fretting about turning my bed into a crime scene. One pad, and I'm good for the night, sleeping like a baby. It's not about the pad, really. It's about that sweet, sweet peace of mind. But here's where the plot twists. I've been seeing this guy for nearly a year, right? Out of the blue, he's like, babe, those puppy pads? Gotta go. I'm there blinking at him because he never peeped a word about them before. I mean, I laid it all out for him when we got serious, and he seemed cool with it. Now, he's all embarrassed, saying he can't explain it to people because, hey, no dog, no need for pads, according to him. We hit a brick wall talking about it, so we let it simmer for a bit. But then, I'm digging through the closet for something totally unrelated, and guess what's missing? My stash of puppy pads vanished. And he's the magician behind the disappearing act. I didn't even have it in me to start round 2, so I just packed up and headed to my folks' place. My phone's blowing up now, him saying I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, and dropping the H-bomb hysterectomy like it's nothing. I just can't wrap my head around it. It's like, my body's been through the ringer enough, and he wants to go nuclear option? It's not just the pads, it's that they're the one thing making my nights manageable. And for him to just trash them without getting it, I mean, I get it. It's weird for him, but it's not about him, is it? It's about me getting through the night without turning into a sleep-deprived zombie. And if he can't get that, well, I don't know. It's a mess, and I'm just here trying to figure out if I'm the crazy one or if it's okay to want a little control over this part of my life. My ex has since asked if we could talk face-to-face, since he wants to know if I'm really going to throw away our whole relationship because of my period. Am I the jerk? The time between our confrontation and me leaving was less than a week, and I've been gone for about a week and a half now. After spending a few hours reading through the responses to my original post, I felt validated enough in my feelings that I reached out to my ex's sister instead of meeting him face-to-face as he had asked. She asked me to call her, and while I won't go into all the details of our conversation, she eventually admitted that my ex had been cheating on me. She only learned about it after we had already broken up because he had been complaining about me storming out. She didn't know how to reach me until I reached out to her. As far as she could figure out, my ex saw his other girlfriend whenever I was working nights. After hearing what I had to say, she thinks he probably invited her over one night when I had a pad prepared for when I got home in the morning, as I would do when I worked nights. She probably saw it, which led to him having to explain it to her. That's why he was so evasive about why he felt the need to explain the puppy pads. Since his birthday is coming up, she and I assumed he probably brought up this whole thing in the first place because he was planning to bring his other girlfriend over when I had to work and didn't want to risk me having a pad down again. Suffice to say, he is staying my ex. While I am a little upset that his sister didn't find a way to tell me about the other girl sooner, I don't blame her at all. Reflecting on the situation, it is clear that the issue of using puppy pads during the OP's period was merely a catalyst for uncovering deeper relationship problems and betrayals. It is essential to prioritize one's own well-being and seek a partner who supports and respects their needs. Moving forward, it is crucial to learn from this experience and establish open and honest communication in future relationships. As I held my newborn in my arms, basking in the joy of motherhood, a nurse named Karen suddenly cast doubt on my identity as the real mother and refused to give me my baby cause I'm not the real mom. Here's how it all went down. So, there I was, in the dimly lit maternity ward, exhausted and overwhelmed, having just given birth to my beautiful baby girl. My heart swelled with joy, but little did I know that the ordeal was far from over. As a first-time mother, I had been eagerly awaiting this day for months. My pregnancy had been a roller coaster of emotions, from the initial excitement to the sleepless nights and swollen feet. I had spent countless hours preparing for this moment, buying baby clothes, decorating the nursery, and reading parenting books cover to cover. The nursery, painted in soft pastel colors, was a testament to the love and anticipation I felt. As I lay there, cradling my newborn in my arms, a nurse named Karen entered the room. Her stern expression was completely out of place in the joyful room. With a frown, she glanced at me and then at my baby. Her eyes narrowed as she muttered those words that would send my world into chaos. "This baby is not yours." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart raced and I clutched my baby tighter. "What? You saw me give birth?" I exclaimed, my voice quivering with a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. Karen crossed her arms, her skepticism unwavering. "I've been doing this job for years and I know when something isn't right," she replied, her tone accusatory. "You don't look like the real mother." My mind was spinning. How could she doubt that I was the mother of this beautiful baby I had just brought into the world? The rising tension in the room was noticeable as Karen's refusal to acknowledge my motherhood ignited a fire within me. Karen, her annoyance growing by the second, continued to challenge me. "Are you sure you're the one who delivered this baby?" she asked, her tone incredulous. "I can't seem to remember you being in this room earlier." My frustration deepened. "Of course I delivered this baby! I was right here in this very bed!" I shot back, my voice filled with determination. I demanded, "Get me a supervisor or someone in charge right now!" I was not going to let this nurse take my baby away from me based on some unfounded suspicion. Karen, however, remained stubbornly defiant. She folded her arms across her chest, a scowl etched on her face. "I don't know," she muttered under her breath, loud enough for me to hear. "I still have my doubts." My heart sank. How could she continue to doubt me after everything I had been through? I watched in disbelief as the supervisor arrived, their presence only seeming to fuel Karen's obstinacy. The supervisor tried to mediate. "All right, let's all calm down. I understand there's some confusion here. Karen, please explain your concerns." Karen answered, "I can't be entirely sure if this woman is the real mother. I just don't remember her delivering the baby, and I've seen some strange things in my years as a nurse." My frustration deepened, and I felt my eyes welling up with tears. "You saw me give birth," I protested, my voice quivering with emotion. The supervisor immediately calmed me, saying, "I apologize for the confusion. We'll review the situation further, but for now, your baby is safe with you." Relief washed over me as I clung to my newborn, tears of frustration turning into tears of joy. Although Karen's doubts still lingered like a dark cloud, I had at least won this round. My daughter was safe in my arms, and I was finally acknowledged as the real mother. As the hours passed, I was able to prove that I was indeed the mother of the newborn, thanks to the hospital records. I continued to care for my baby, holding her close and feeling an overwhelming sense of relief. Karen, on the other hand, seemed embarrassed by her earlier mistake and kept her distance. The incident had taught us all a valuable lesson about jumping to conclusions, especially when it involves something as important as a mother's identity. Leaving the hospital with my newborn daughter was a joyous and emotional experience. All the preparations I had made for her, from the nursery decorations to the tiny onesies, felt worthwhile now that we were finally going home together. As I cradled my precious baby girl in my arms, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was her real mother, and nothing could change that fact. The incident with Karen had a silver lining. She was suspended from her duties due to her unfounded accusations. But most importantly, my heart was now filled with an even greater love and determination to provide the best life possible for my little one. And Karen, Well, she would be remembered as the nurse who had once doubted a mother's love, but had ultimately learned a valuable lesson in humility. That incident must have been so emotional for the mom. I'm glad she got to take her baby home and start their new life together. I never expected a casual swim in the pool to turn into a nightmare. Little did I know, my innocent presence and relaxation would lead to false accusations and a confrontation with an entitled dad. Here's how it all went down. I'm a 28-year-old male, and I'm autistic. I just wanted to spend some time relaxing in our local swimming pool. I had my black goggles with me, and I enjoyed the soothing feeling of swimming underwater. Sometimes I'd simply rest against the poolside and bask in the calmness of the moment. I was the only adult male without any children in the pool that day, but I thought nothing of it because the pool was open for everyone, with both shallow and deep ends. While I was peacefully resting by the poolside, a manager, who wasn't even a lifeguard, approached me. He informed me that my presence and behavior were making someone uncomfortable. "Excuse me, sir, I need to talk to you for a moment. We've received a complaint about your behavior," he said. At first, I thought I had upset an overworried parent, and as a parent myself, I felt terrible. I immediately explained to the manager that I was simply relaxing by the poolside. "I'm just here to relax by the pool. I enjoy swimming underwater with my goggles, and sometimes I like to rest here." I didn't mean to make anyone uncomfortable, I told him. I offered to take off my goggles to reassure them and even expressed my willingness to apologize to the person who had complained. The manager seemed to accept my explanation, and presumably went back to inform the concerned parent that I was sorry for unintentionally causing distress. However, my peaceful moment by the pool didn't last long. After about 10 minutes, the manager returned, and this time, he had a grave expression on his face. "I'm sorry, but the police have arrived, and they want to speak with you," he said. I was shocked, and asked if it was about me. "The police? Is it about me?" I inquired. The manager confirmed that they indeed wanted to talk to me. That's when I encountered the entitled dad for the first time. "You better go quietly, or I'll tell everyone here you're a pedophile," he said with a menacing tone. He was a big guy, maybe in his early to mid-30s, and he looked physically fit. He didn't say much to me, but what he did say was chilling. With those words, he walked away, leaving me bewildered and utterly outraged. The manager escorted me out of the pool area, and although I felt tempted to confront that jerk, I knew it wouldn't end well. I managed to keep my composure and left without further incident, feeling humiliated and unjustly accused. When I reached the locker rooms, I found 2 policewomen waiting for me. Fortunately, they were extremely nice and friendly throughout the entire encounter. After grabbing a towel, they started asking me about the situation and what I had been doing at the pool. I was honest with them and explained that I was simply trying to relax and had no idea that my presence was upsetting someone. I also disclosed that I am autistic, which led one of the officers to share that they had a family member who was also autistic. They then asked for my details to run them through their database. While that was taking place, the entitled dad walked by and one of the officers requested to speak with him. He agreed, and they went elsewhere to have a conversation. I changed back into my clothes, and as I was exiting the changing room, I encountered the entitled dad standing in my way with his back to me. I couldn't hear his exact words over the noise in the room, but I did hear him loudly instruct his kids to stay put while he went to get changed. He walked away without seeing me, and I left the locker room. The police stayed with me in the lobby until their database came back. Of course, it came back that I had no history of crime, and the gym staff had told the officers I had no history of disturbing other people, so I was free to go. However, the entitled dad was hanging around near the back of the lobby, watching me. The police saw this too, and offered to give me a ride home since I'd walked to the gym. I accepted since I was pretty shell-shocked by the whole ordeal, and worried this guy would try something on my way home. In all, this was a really scary experience. I'm just glad the manager and the police were professional enough to let me speak my piece. I should mention there were other parents in the pool who didn't care about my presence. Another dad and his kids were playing right next to me, and he didn't care. I went back to the gym today to see if the same manager was on duty. Thankfully he was, and he took me aside to explain his perspective on things. I'll call him Mike, not his real name. Apparently, this Kevin seemed to be trouble from the start, being very irate with Mike, as well as other staff members. The only reason it wasn't the lifeguards dealing with him was because they were scared of him, being 17 to 18-year-olds, and this guy was an early 30s looking buff man. Even Mike, who was roughly the same age as Kevin, was concerned with his behavior, thinking if he got near me, that we'd end up throwing hands. When Mike first told him that I had offered to leave my goggles off so I wouldn't dive underwater, That apparently wasn't good enough. Then, when the police arrived, Mike had actually just told them he was concerned for my safety. Nothing about the pedophile accusation. No wonder they were so nice. I then asked Mike if at any point he thought I really was a threat to the kids. He laughed and said no, saying that when I had mentioned I had kids of my own, the fact that I had offered to apologize and attempt to de-escalate things, he could tell I wasn't dangerous. He was thinking more about me being safe than whether or not I was a threat. The police seemed to think that way too. At one point after I left, Kevin was getting mouthy again, and a receptionist chewed him out for his actions. Then Mike asked if I made it home okay, and I told him about the police giving me a ride. Their car wasn't in sight of the building. He was relieved and hoped this event hadn't put me off coming back. I do plan to come back to this gym now, since I can count on the staff to have my back now. But yeah, everything is cool now. And everybody knows what a jerk this guy is, so I don't think I'm in any further trouble anymore. Oh, and to answer why I left, I was given the choice whether to go or not. No one told me to leave. I was planning on leaving a few minutes before this encounter anyway, so I didn't mind too much. It was only when the police officer caught Kevin staring at me that they offered to give me a ride. I asked if they had a police log number for what happened. Mike said they weren't given one but offered to chase it up for me. I declined, not really wanting to put myself any further into an issue that seems more or less resolved anyway. It's disheartening to hear about incidents where innocent individuals face false accusations and unjust treatment. We need to promote inclusivity and understanding to create a society where everyone feels comfortable and safe in public spaces. I never thought that a few forgotten chores could push me to the edge of sanity, but as I stood on the brink of a messy divorce, I couldn't help but question my own judgment. The constant struggle to balance my responsibilities, my business, and my own well-being against a husband who seemed oblivious to it all had brought me to a breaking point. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. Here's how it all went down. My husband, who is 40 years old, and I, who am 39 years old, have been married for 12 years and together for 13. Overall, we have a wonderful marriage. However, I often find myself responsible for the majority of the housework, cooking, errands, laundry, and waking up early with our youngest son, who is 6 years old, and our other son, who is 13 years old, even on weekends. I also spend a significant amount of time cleaning up after my husband because he forgets to do things. As a result, I rarely have any free time and I never get the opportunity to sleep in. Many of the things he forgets are minor, such as leaving shoes in the walkway, leaving lint from the lint trap on top of the dryer instead of disposing of it, putting trash in an already full trash can, leaving used glasses out instead of bringing them to the sink, and leaving used wash rags on the shower floor, among others. It may seem trivial, but over time, these small things take up a significant amount of my time cleaning up after a grown-up, especially when I'm already cleaning up after two non-grown-ups. I own a business and am working on my degree, so I have very little free time to spare. On the other hand, he works from home and has the luxury of sleeping in, taking nap breaks, playing video games during lunch breaks, and spending an hour or two every evening playing video games to decompress while I study. He does allow me some time to go to the gym or go for a run, but I find myself skipping these activities more and more just to keep up with the mess and chores at home. When I bring this up, he claims it's unfair because I only focus on the few times he forgets to clean up after himself, without acknowledging all the other things he does. I'm not trying to be unfair, I tell him. It's just that it gets really overwhelming when I have to clean up after you, especially when it happens frequently. He does clean up after himself about 50% of the time, depending on what it is. But some things he legitimately never does, like leaving lint on the dryer or throwing away used toilet paper rolls. He also suffers from a sleep disorder, which can make a person feel foggy sometimes. I get that you have a sleep disorder, I say, trying to be understanding. But it's not just about that. It's about us sharing responsibilities and maintaining our living space together. He says I should be more compassionate with him and accept this as a part of loving someone with a chronic illness. The truth is, I do understand what chronic illness is like, and I do have compassion. I myself have been living with chronic pain and fatigue for years, and am finally undergoing the diagnostic and treatment process for lupus and RA. I do have compassion, I assure him. I know what it's like to deal with chronic illness, but we also need to find a balance that works for both of us in this relationship. I constantly experience pain and exhaustion. Despite this, I push through and make sure to maintain a reasonable level of order and cleanliness in my home, because that's what responsible adults do for their children. I don't have the luxury of forgetting to do important tasks like laundry, dishes, or cleaning because no one else will do them. My partner also claims that my standards of cleanliness are unreasonably high. However, I believe that not wanting to leave urine stains around the base of the toilet or leaving used dishes and food on counters in an area known for roaches is simply having a basic standard of cleanliness. In comparison, I feel like his standards are lower than those of the average adult, as most people would find those habits quite unhygienic. One of the lessons I've learned through my journey with Aid is the importance of saying no. Although I deeply love my husband and best friend, I don't see this situation changing unless he is compelled to make an effort. I'm beginning to realize that removing myself from the equation may be the best option for preserving my own sanity. This way, I will have one less person to clean up after and can find some much-needed downtime through shared custody. Even if he only had the kids on 1 day a week, I feel like custody sharing might force him to hold himself to a reasonable standard of hygiene and cleanliness too. I definitely enable his laziness out of necessity to meet basic safe levels of cleanliness. Without me there, he'd have to learn to be consistent or risk losing visitation. This is my only complaint within the marriage. We really do love and care for each other, and he's emotionally very kind and supportive. I love him very much. Am I a jerk divorcing over this? We fought about it, and I ended up ugly crying, partially out of frustration and partially because I'd been up since 4:45 a.m. with the youngest. I told him that it was about lint on the washer and used toilet rolls on the sink, but not really. I said that I felt like he didn't listen nor care to try. Through my tears, I poured out my feelings, saying, "It's not just about the lint and the toilet paper rolls, it's about feeling like my needs and concerns aren't heard or understood." We apologized to each other, and he wrapped me up in our duvet, reassuring me with his actions. He took over the housework and tended to the kids. He's genuinely sweet and does try when he realizes how much it means to me. It's been nice to have a day off, but I can't help but be skeptical because this isn't the first time I've reached a breaking point or felt deeply upset, only for him to be extra nice for a while, only to revert to his old habits in a few days. I guess we'll see how things unfold from here. After the meltdown on the day, he did as promised and took over the housework and kids for the day. However, as I had feared, by the next day, he had reverted back to his old, dismissive, chauvinistic self. He didn't contribute to any housework for the rest of the week, leaving me in a position of unpreparedness for a very important test due tomorrow. This is his usual pattern. He puts in effort just long enough to make me think he has changed, and then he reverts back. Starting on Sunday, I reminded him multiple times that I needed time to study. The test is on math, and it's difficult. My plan was to study for 2 hours per day and be prepared by Friday. This meant he would need to help out with tasks like giving baths and reading bedtime stories so I could focus. But it didn't happen. As a result, I ended up using the time I needed to study to cook, clean, and do laundry. Now, it's late on the eve of the test, and I have only had 1 hour of study time. I'm exhausted and unable to even imagine practicing proportions or quadratic equations right now. Out of frustration, I broke down and told him that I couldn't handle it anymore. I run my own business, work hard in school, and keep everything running smoothly. It's an incredibly unfair burden, and I'm tired of trying to make him care. I asked him how he could treat his female coworkers as equals, but not extend that same respect to me. He admitted to being a hypocrite and stormed off to play video games. At this moment, I'm considering taking incompletes for the semester so I can focus on my business and navigate a messy divorce from someone who acts like a big man baby. Before marrying, discussing living arrangements and division of household chores should definitely be a part of the conversation. It's important for both parties to be clear about their expectations and responsibilities to avoid potential conflicts down the line. Communication and understanding are key in maintaining a healthy and balanced relationship. I never expected that a simple offer to pay for a gender reveal scan would spiral into a chaotic battle for control and inclusion. As tensions rise and boundaries are tested, the true colors of my family begin to surface. Secrets, manipulation, and conflicting loyalties threaten to tear us apart. Here's how it all went down. So my girlfriend and I found out in August that we were going to be parents to our first child. Overall, everyone was very happy about the news. However, I was initially shocked because it wasn't planned. In that moment, I called my mother for reassurance, and it helped. I understand that she wasn't happy that I told her over a phone call, and I apologize for that. We have since resolved the issue and moved on. My sister has been supportive. She helped us move to a new house and wants to take my partner out for baby shopping in a few weeks. However, my mother has been less helpful. During a FaceTime conversation in mid-August about housing options, my mother randomly asked me if my partner was on the pill. I recalled the awkward moment vividly. "So, Mom, we've been looking at houses in the neighborhood." Before I could finish, my mother interrupted. "Wait, dear, I have a question. Is your partner on birth control?" I blinked in surprise, not expecting this question at all. Yeah, Mom," I replied, slightly taken aback. She's been on the pill for a while now. I've even seen her take it. My mother's inquiry felt like she was insinuating that I had intentionally trapped my partner into having a baby. It was an uncomfortable and unnecessary question that left me feeling defensive and hurt. I've had some concerns about my sister. While I appreciate her excitement, I sometimes feel that she is overly involved. I shared my feelings with my sister during one of our conversations. Sis, I really appreciate all the support you've been giving us, but I have some concerns. She looked at me attentively, waiting for me to continue. I love that you want to be so involved, but sometimes it feels like you're making decisions for us, I explained. You mentioned having the baby with us every weekend so we could have some couple time, but we need to consider both our families' needs. My sister nodded, understanding my point. You're right, I might have gotten carried away with my excitement. She also expressed concern about us moving closer to my girlfriend's family than mine. She questioned the support we would receive from her family, as her mother lives 2 hours away. I reassured my sister. You know, my partner's mother is incredibly supportive. She visits every weekend to care for her own mother, who has dementia. We'll be just fine, and we'll make sure to balance time between both sides of the family. My sister kindly offered to pay for our gender reveal scan, which we both appreciated. Understandably, she wanted to attend the appointment since she was covering the expenses. Hey, my sister said with a warm smile. I'd love to cover the cost of the gender reveal scan for you guys. It's a special moment, and I want to be a part of it. We exchanged grateful glances and thanked her for her generosity. However, things took a bit of a turn when she suggested that we invite our mom as well, as the facility allowed up to 5 people. Actually, I hesitated. We were thinking about inviting my girlfriend's mom too. My sister raised an eyebrow, looking a bit surprised. Why her mom? This is our family's involvement in the pregnancy, and your girlfriend's family will be present at other events. We explained that it wasn't about excluding anyone, but rather having support during this personal appointment. My girlfriend didn't want it to be just my family present, and she had her own reasons for wanting her mom there. Previously, my mom had insisted that it should either be just my family or no scan at all. In response, I agreed to pay for the scan ourselves. I'm sorry, Mom, I told her during a phone call, but we feel that it's important to have both our families there. We don't want to exclude anyone. My sister then messaged my girlfriend, explaining her reasoning, which left her in tears. My girlfriend, still emotional from the message, told me what my sister had said. She mentioned that your family prefers to keep things separate and can be a bit antisocial. She sniffled. They believed that meeting my mom at the scan would be awkward. We both felt frustrated and hurt by my family's stance. It seemed like they were prioritizing their own comfort over our wishes and the desire for both of our families to be involved in this special moment. Both my mom and sister are trying to make me understand their point of view. While I do understand their perspective, I simply do not agree with it. My girlfriend's mom is not upset about not being included. She is more concerned about how this situation has affected us. She reassured me not to worry about my family and offered to pay for the scan herself, allowing me to invite whomever I want. Despite reaching agreements on our side, I still have doubts due to my sister's initial offer to pay. Additionally, I was contemplating inviting my dad, but my girlfriend's mom believes that it would upset my family. Am I the jerk here? To provide further clarification, the phone call with my mom was not initially met with a negative reaction. She was happy and congratulated me based on the assumption that we were deciding to keep the baby at that time. It was only later revealed that she wasn't too thrilled when we recorded my sister's reaction. At an event, I informed my mother that I would be driving to my dad's place to see him the next day. My mom doesn't think my dad does enough for me. Although we rarely see each other in person, maybe once or twice a year, our relationship is fine. This was his first time becoming a grandfather, while it was my mother's 4th time. My sister already has 3 children of her own. She is eager to have a 4th child, but her husband keeps refusing. When I mentioned this to my mom, she suggested FaceTiming him, but I declined. She then said, "So he gets a live surprise and I get a phone call?" I explained that I needed initial support and apologized that she found out this way. Some people have asked about the situation with my dad. He and my mom have been divorced for 24 years. He wasn't the kindest to my mother at the time, and I had a stepmother who constantly drove a wedge between my dad and me. However, she has been out of the picture for a few years now. I have informed my dad about the current situation, and he believes that my mom and sister are being ridiculous. People have told me that I need to have a backbone, and I have been working hard in therapy to overcome this. To provide some background, I was a vulnerable child who was suspected of having autism at a young age. However, my mom refused to have me assessed because she believed I should learn alongside neurotypical children. This approach didn't work, as I constantly doubted myself. With the help of people like my sister, who would point out my mistakes, my confidence continued to suffer. It wasn't until I went through a breakup at the age of 23 and experienced a downward spiral of depression that I sought more help. Doctors determined that I didn't have autism, but rather anxiety. However, my mom and sister insist that I do have autism because they believe I would receive more support. But when I connect it with my problem now, it feels like manipulation. I've pushed back on several occasions and asked to be left alone. I would receive comments about how something I did was due to autism, which I asked them to stop. My sister has 2 children diagnosed with autism and 1 with ADHD, and she works for an autism charity. After being diagnosed with anxiety and depression, I started taking Prozac. I had also been in a relationship with an ex at a different time, and I noticed subtle controlling behaviors. We didn't work out, and my family supported me through that. I am realizing that narcissistic individuals often clash with each other because they try to expose the other person in order to make themselves look better. So my upbringing was conflicting, as there was both nitpicking and seemingly genuine care. My mother has also experienced abusive relationships and the loss of a partner, so I attributed her strange behavior to that. The same goes for my sister, who went through a stillbirth. Now, I'm with a wonderful person, ready to start a family. And while it is unfortunate that my family couldn't be cooperative and understanding, my partner and our baby come first. We need each other above all else, and no one should dictate who takes care of them or anything else. I confronted my mother about her comment regarding the baby trap, and she apologized to me, but not to my partner, who overheard the conversation. Since then, she has been distant. Now, I'm questioning why I am even allowing her to come to the scan if my partner's mother will be coming after her behavior. My mother has a tendency to backtrack, often saying something that could annoy or upset someone and then claiming it was a joke. I have since called her out on her backpedaling, but she denies it. My mother's strange views on separating from my partner's family stem from her own anxiety, I believe. We suspect she may be on the autism spectrum, but she is in denial about it. We have witnessed moments where she experiences sensory overload, becomes obsessed with specific topics, mostly conspiracy theories, lacks a filter at times, and struggles to see things from others' perspectives. I believe my sister wants to be seen as the best guardian, possibly even a parent, and views her family as a threat. Some people questioned the need for a reveal scan, but we thought it would be a nice experience for our first child. I understand that it may not be everyone's preference, but it is what we want to do. Anyway, my sister called me on Sunday, and I explained that my girlfriend should be able to have whoever she wants at the scan. She expressed concerns about the awkwardness of the situation at the scan, so I suggested a coffee meetup instead. She said she would discuss it with my mother. However, my mother declined the idea, claiming it was too formal. In her words, she said, "I'm sure I'll meet them someday." She then suggested having 2 separate scans for each side of the family, but I turned down this suggestion as I found it inappropriate. My girlfriend should not be treated as a test subject for other people's enjoyment. Instead, I propose that we book our own scan and decide who to invite, whether it's just the 2 of us or others. However, this suggestion made my mother respond passive-aggressively, saying, "Fine, do what you want. I've been nothing but supportive, and your girlfriend is going to want her family there for everything." I reassured her that this was not the case and that my girlfriend wants both families involved. Knowing that they would continue to make offers regarding the scan, I sent them a long message in a group chat. My sister attempted to gaslight me into feeling guilty. After she said we should part ways, I blocked her on all platforms. I refuse to allow that kind of influence in my life, and I especially won't subject my girlfriend to it if they are not going to respect our boundaries. Shortly after, my mother called me and told me that my message was condescending, cold, and formal. She didn't understand why I was overreacting about the scan and told me not to interrupt her. I explained to her that it's not just about the scan, but about her excessive involvement in general. It is clear that my sister left out certain details because she was unaware of my sister's desire to look after the baby every weekend and her insecurity about the support from my girlfriend's family. My mother suggested that we all meet up to talk, but I refuse to be bullied. If I am to attend a meeting, I want someone in my corner. My mother is attempting to play the role of peacemaker and has sided with my sister's erratic behavior, so I don't fully trust either of them. As for the scan, my girlfriend and I have booked our own appointment, and we plan to have a reveal party next weekend where everyone is welcome. However, for now, I will not be inviting my mother and sister. I've explained the situation to my dad, and he is disgusted by their behavior. It's worth noting that my sister and I have different fathers. After a few days, we've already made our booking for the scan. The decision on who attends the scan depends on individual preferences. It's important to clarify that this decision is not something anyone has dictated. Instead, it's something we've discussed because she's the one carrying the baby and desires support from both families. Unfortunately, disagreements about what should be our decision have made things challenging. We're embarking on the journey of starting our own family, so we believe it's our prerogative to make these choices. I felt uncomfortable with the attempt to change our minds after we declined the additional conditions without a willingness to compromise on meeting beforehand. To be candid, It seemed like an intrusion. While we haven't communicated much, Mom, I assume that you both share similar sentiments. Going forward, events like the baby shower will be separate for each family, allowing close friends and family to participate. We extend an open invitation to both families, including the upcoming reveal after the scan next weekend. Hosting separate events for each family would not only be more costly, but also demand more time and effort in organization and attendance. There's no reason why either family should be excluded from events that involve the family we are creating. If you choose not to spend time with her family, it's a matter of personal preference, not a rigid rule. Both my mom and sister have reached out to me via text. I had borrowed £50 from my sister to help with my car repair. Given that my girlfriend and I have been occupied with moving, one of my tires blew out at a rather inconvenient time. I promised to repay her on payday, which was last Thursday. Her text demanded the money back and implied that I was withholding it unjustly, even going so far as to suggest that her kids needed it. While I suspected this was an attempt to provoke a reaction, I chose to silently return the money, maintaining my integrity. She then proceeded to text my girlfriend, despite my explicit request in my previous message not to involve her in this matter. Her message expressed concern about the scan even though it was scheduled for the 15th, originally her intended date, though she seemed confused, and urged my girlfriend not to be upset. It seems she is fishing for information and is more focused on the baby than our relationship. My girlfriend has chosen not to respond. Earlier this week, my nan also texted me saying, "I rarely intervene, but I care for all of you and wish to mend this rift." Before your sister got to know all the people at school, I attended every meeting with her. She's socially shy when it comes to meeting new people, so, like Mom, I was her comfort. However, I've stepped back now. Please reconcile. I believe she understands that you need space. She's heartbroken. Extend your hand. Her intentions were well-meaning. You've made your point, but she adores you and holds your girlfriend in high regard. My love to you both, always. Please mend this rift for me. After a day of contemplation, I responded that it wasn't my responsibility to repair the rift. While I don't wish for family relationships to deteriorate, I need my space. They've exerted control over me and caused me pain too many times, and I won't tolerate it any longer. My nan replied, expressing her understanding and stating that she won't take sides. Yesterday morning, my mom reached out, expressing her concern for my well-being and assuming that the scan was this weekend, even though she originally wanted to attend but is now away. She mentioned a desire to catch up during the week. However, it doesn't appear that either of them has expressed remorse for their behavior. It is important to establish boundaries with your family and ensure they respect your wishes and treat you with the respect you deserve. You have the right to make decisions for yourself, your partner, and your growing family. Remember that you do not have to negotiate with manipulative or controlling individuals. Be firm and direct in asserting your boundaries. If they try to undermine your decisions, take charge and handle things on your own. Surround yourself with supportive and respectful people. As I sat in the library, my breast pump in hand, I never expected Karen to rip it off of me and say only a cow does breastfeeding. Little did I know that her disdain for my choice would escalate into a shocking act of destruction. With my dreams shattered and my sense of justice shattered, here's how it all went down. I've always been a bit of an oddball, a loner by nature, but not by choice. Growing up in a small town, I dreamed of big city lights and fast-paced life. My parents, though loving, were deeply traditional, which often put me at odds with their views. I moved out as soon as I turned 18, chasing my dreams in the city. Life in the city wasn't easy. I juggled multiple jobs while attending night school. I wanted to break into journalism, to be the voice of those unheard. It was during this hectic time that I met Karen. She was a colleague at one of my part-time jobs. Karen was bold, outspoken, and unapologetic about her views. We weren't friends per se, but we shared a few laughs during breaks. I never imagined our paths would cross outside of work in such a dramatic fashion. The day started like any other. I was in the public library, researching for my final paper. I had my breast pump with me, a necessity since I was still nursing my 6-month-old. The library, with its quiet and calm, seemed like a good place for a pumping break. As I settled into a secluded corner, I heard a familiar voice. It was Karen, ranting to someone over the phone. I tried to ignore her, focusing on my task. That's when she spotted me. "Breastfeeding is for cows!" Karen shouted, striding toward me. I was shocked, not only by her words, but by her presence in the library. "Karen, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "This is a public place. I can be wherever I want. But you doing that here? It's disgusting!" She spat, her eyes fixed on the breast pump. I felt a surge of anger. "It's natural, Karen. I'm feeding my child." "You're just lazy. Real mothers don't rely on machines," she sneered, reaching out and snatching the pump from my hands. "Hey, give that back!" I yelled, standing up. Karen, with a twisted grin, ripped the pump apart, throwing the pieces across the room. Only cows do that, she said, storming out of the library. I was left there, stunned and humiliated. My vital piece of equipment was destroyed, and I felt a deep sense of violation. The next few days were a blur. I filed a complaint against Karen, but my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The management didn't take my concerns seriously, dismissing it as a personal issue. I couldn't afford a new breast pump, and hand expressing was painful and inefficient. My milk supply began to dwindle, and my baby became fussy and irritable. The stress of the situation was overwhelming. Determined to not let Karen get away with it, I started documenting everything. I gathered witnesses from the library, but most were hesitant to get involved. Frustrated and desperate, I decided to confront Karen directly. I waited for Karen after work, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and anger. Karen, we need to talk, I said as she approached her car. There's nothing to talk about. You got what you deserved, she sneered. You destroyed my property, Karen. You humiliated me. I want you to pay for a new pump, I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. Karen laughed. You think I care about your problems? You're nothing. Just a pathetic excuse for a mother. The words stung, but I stood my ground. I'll take this to the police if I have to. Go ahead. No one will believe you, Karen taunted, getting into her car and driving away. True to her word, Karen made sure my complaint went nowhere. The police dismissed it as a petty quarrel, and at work, I became the subject of whispers and judgmental looks. I was left to struggle on my own. My dreams of a career in journalism seemed more distant than ever. I had to drop out of night school to take up more shifts, barely making ends meet. Karen, on the other hand, seemed untouchable. Her audacity and lack of remorse made it clear that she lived in a world where consequences didn't apply to her. Life has a way of throwing curveballs. The incident with Karen didn't break me, but it changed me. I became more guarded, more cynical. The world wasn't the place of justice and fairness I had once believed in. As for Karen, I heard she eventually left the job, moving on to who knows where. I sometimes wonder if she ever faced the consequences of her actions, but deep down I know the answer. The city that once held my dreams now seemed to mock me with its indifference. I'm still here, surviving, but the brightness has dimmed. My story isn't one of triumph or redemption. It's a testament to the harsh realities of life, where sometimes the unjust go unpunished, and the innocent are left to pick up the pieces. Karen is absolutely out of control. It's unbelievable how some people can be so heartless and get away with it. Sending love and support to the author, you're incredibly strong for enduring all of that. I questioned my sanity as I struggled to maintain control over my neurodivergent mind. The tension escalated when his mother decided to visit, insisting on staying with us. Little did I know, this would set off a chain of events that would test the limits of our relationships. Here's how it all went down. I am neurodivergent and have bipolar, which makes me prone to psychosis. I was diagnosed many years ago, long before I met my husband. He has been aware of my condition since we met, and he understands that there are certain quirks and eccentricities that come with my neurodivergence. Despite my challenges, I am highly functional, although these challenges may not be visible to everyone. However, both my partner and his family, as well as my own friends and family, are all aware of my situation. Specifically, I have a policy of not allowing overnight house guests, and I also have a curfew of midnight for guests unless it has been pre-approved by me. This is because the sounds, noises, and interruptions caused by other people can be overwhelming for me. I have a limit to how much I can handle and mask before I become completely drained. This can lead to losing my temper, being overcome with emotions, or even experiencing sleeplessness and psychosis due to overstimulation. I hope that my husband's mother never has to witness me in such a state. Losing my temper and filter is not something I want to do around friends or family. I also need 4 hours to calm my brain down after a lot of socialization before I can go to sleep, hence my midnight cutoff. I don't feel this drained, stressed way around my partner, or he wouldn't be my husband, but everyone except him and my best friend of a decade, yes. My husband moved from his city, which his mother lives in, his father has passed long ago, to my city to be with me when we got married. Before he did that, I talked to him about how I can't have overnight house guests. In 2 years of dating, neither of us has had an overnight house guest except each other. He said he understood, and it was no problem. But now, his mother wants to come to visit for a week at Christmas, and she wants to stay with us, in the guest room, my partner's office that has a bed in it also. He sleeps in there when I'm having trouble sleeping. This will require my partner to work in the kitchen, right beside my office corner. Not really a room, causing a ton of noise and disruption, and we'll have another person around all the time draining my energy. Currently, our offices are separated. My partner said he agreed with the overnight house guest thing when he assumed I meant our friends. He says he never understood it to mean his mother. I've offered to pay for half a hotel when his mother comes to stay, but he says that isn't the point. and she doesn't want to come if she can't stay with us. We live in the city, and the hotel is literally 1 block from us. This is not an exaggeration. I've stayed at it before for a week when I was waiting for our apartment to become ready, and it's very classy. Am I a jerk for insisting his mother stays at a hotel when she visits so I can stay sane? I spoke to my husband John last night about the situation regarding his mother staying in a hotel. I explained that I would pay for and go to a hotel myself or pay for half of his mother's hotel when she came. John was absolutely shocked. First, he was concerned about me not being able to manage the household for the week and taking over my responsibilities, as I had anticipated. John has autism and is very attached to his routines. Here is a breakdown of my responsibilities in the house. I handle his laundry, taxes, vet visits, grooming appointments, grocery shopping, and scheduling of doctors, dentists, and optometrists. I also take him to all of his appointments, handle car maintenance and washing, visit the pharmacy and dry cleaner on his behalf, and replace any broken or damaged items. Additionally, I plan all of our date nights, anniversaries, vacations, and trips. I even selected all the furnishings for our apartment because it stressed him out. I'm in charge of budgeting, finances, and bill payment using both our money. While he spends about an hour a night cooking and cleaning, around 4 times a week, I dedicate much more time to running the rest of the household. When John's mother wanted to visit, it was already a challenge for him to accommodate her within his routine. The thought of me being absent during her visit made him even more uncomfortable. He expressed his dislike about not sleeping in the same bed with me for a week and considered it a non-negotiable issue. Eventually, he agreed to call his mother, although we were both anxious because he had built up her expectations. Respecting parents is highly valued in their culture, and John was afraid of offending his mother. During the call, we explained the situation, emphasizing that it is difficult for me to fall asleep unless I am with him or my best friend. That is why we had the rule of no house guests. We assured his mother that there was a lovely 4-star hotel less than a block away, and we would be more than happy to cover the expenses. However, his mother's reaction was unexpected. She started yelling and speaking loudly, but not at me. From what I recall, she said, "John, you had a fight with her about me staying there when you're happy to pay for me to stay in a 4-star hotel. John, I know you had a fight because you never both call me unless it's a holiday. You're telling me you didn't immediately give me the chance to stay in a 4-star hotel. John, when was the last time I stayed in a 4-star hotel? Let me tell you, the answer is never." His mother was extremely enthusiastic about staying in the 4-star hotel and kept making joking comments about how she might not even see us during the vacation because she would be enjoying the spa and fancy restaurant at the hotel. John was delighted with the outcome because both I and his mother were happy. It didn't matter to him that she wasn't staying with us. What mattered was that she wasn't offended by the idea of staying in a hotel. After all the discussions and negotiations, it seems like finding a solution that makes everyone happy was the key. Communication and understanding played a crucial role in resolving this situation. It's important to remember that each person's needs and preferences should be respected and taken into consideration when making decisions that affect everyone involved. I never thought keeping a secret from my boyfriend could lead to such chaos. Little did he know I owned the building we lived in. When the truth finally unraveled, it ignited a storm of accusations and shattered trust. Here's how it all went down. When I was 18, my dad gifted me a house with 2 stories. I am extremely thankful. We're not upper class, but my dad bought this house for a cheap price a long time ago. It was his grandmother's cousin's house. I know that this was an extreme privilege, and I am forever grateful for this. The layout of this building resembles an apartment, but it is actually a house. Each story has its own separate entry, kitchen, and bathroom. I live upstairs while renting out the downstairs. My boyfriend, who is 25 years old, moved in with me about 3 months ago, and we have been together for 6 months. I haven't asked him to contribute financially for utilities or rent. The only thing he contributes to is groceries, which we split 50-50. I haven't mentioned to him that I own the building, as it's not something I disclose to many people. If someone asks, I tell them the truth. But if they assume I'm a renter, I let them believe that. We haven't discussed the topic of being a landlord, the downstairs renter, or the building's owner. Last Tuesday, the renter came up to inform me that her freezer had stopped working. I answered the door, and my boyfriend overheard our conversation, I suppose. I went downstairs to assess the situation, and we concluded that she would purchase a new freezer, send me the receipt, and I would reimburse her. She was very appreciative of this solution. When I went upstairs, my boyfriend asked if the freezer could be fixed. I told him no, but that I would buy a new one and cover the cost. He looked at me as if I were crazy and asked why on earth I would pay for her freezer. I explained that as her landlord, The freezer was already there when she started renting, so I would take responsibility for the expense. He then asked if I was serious, and I confirmed that I was. He started yelling at me, questioning why I hadn't told him this information earlier and calling me a jerk. I apologized for not informing him, but I didn't think it would matter. He expressed disbelief that he was in a relationship with a landlord, claiming that landlords only use people for money and prioritize money over providing affordable housing. The downstairs area consists of 1 kitchen, 1 bathroom, and 4 other rooms, for which I charge $500 in rent. While I understand that many people have had negative experiences with landlords, I strive to be a good one. He demanded that I give him 50% of the rent money I collect, or else he would consider me just as bad as he believed. Was I really the jerk for not telling him? He has not talked to me since Tuesday, and I have tried telling him that I am truly sorry, but he doesn't answer me at all. To those who have been supportive, thank you. After all your comments, I think this relationship needs to come to an end, but I will try and talk with him today or tomorrow and see what he says. To those who think this is made up, trust me when I say I wish this was. I can't speak for why he said things that contradict each other, that only he can have an answer to. Ending the relationship should not be that hard emotionally, even though I have grown to like him. Seeing and realizing what you helped me do, the emotions you can gather in 6 months are easy to overcome. Why would I charge $500 in rent for a place with 5 rooms? First, I don't live in the US, and this place is not in the city. It is located about 1 hour's drive from the nearest city and about 15 minutes from the nearest store. Although there are still about 3,000 people living here, the amenities are limited to a preschool, a playground, a school for kids age 6, 9, and a church. In this area, the cost of other places with the same number of rooms is about $600, $700, and it can be slightly higher if the place is newly renovated, has a nice view, or includes a garage, among other factors. The building I own does not have a garage and has only been partially renovated, with new floors and wallpapers in the rooms that we changed. Other necessary changes, such as stoves, bathtubs, and toilets, have also been made, but I don't consider them a complete renovation. Despite the rent being below the market rate, it still covers the outstanding expenses associated with the house. Regarding the claim that this story is fake, I can assure you that it is not. I understand that some people may question its authenticity for various reasons, such as the belief that the rent would be higher if it were real. However, as explained earlier, there are valid reasons for the rent amount. Another reason some doubt the story is because my boyfriend initially expressed disapproval of landlords, but later showed interest in receiving money from the rent. Not everything in life makes perfect sense, and I cannot fully explain why he may have said that, as I am not him. As for the question of why I would move in with someone after 3 months, it was because my boyfriend was facing difficulties in his previous living situation. He shared these problems with me, and I offered to let him stay with me for as long as he needed or wanted. I did this as a kind gesture because I did not want him to be homeless, and he expressed that he would feel like a failure if he moved back in with his parents. I read as much as I could, and after reflecting on both recent and past events that I previously ignored, I made the decision to break up with him. It may seem impulsive, but I felt that the sooner I did it, the better. I texted my dad and explained the situation to him, asking if he would be willing to come to my place and wait in the driveway while I talked to my boyfriend. Without hesitation, he agreed. I thought about what I wanted to say and how to approach the conversation. I was extremely nervous about how it would go, and I have to admit, I was scared because people had warned me to be careful and that he might try to hurt me. When I arrived home, he was already there. I greeted him and he didn't say anything. I texted my dad to let him know that he had arrived, and my dad came over. I sat down on the couch next to my boyfriend, who was unaware that my dad was there. I can't remember the exact details of the conversation, as my mind tends to go blank in stressful situations, but I will do my best to recall it. I think we need to have a talk with each other if this relationship is going to work, I said. So you are ready to apologize, he responded. I will apologize for not telling you that you lived in my building, which I have apologized for many times already. I will not apologize for not giving you a part of my income, I explained. And why is that such a big deal to you? If you don't rent out for the purpose of taking people's money, you should have no problem giving any of that money away, he argued. I really try to understand how you think. You think I am in it for the money and think I am a bad person for renting out the downstairs complex, but yet you want money from it. Don't you understand that it seems like you are just in it for the money? I rent out the downstairs for $500. If you really believe all landlords are money grabbers and not good people, would you like me to donate half of it to charities specifically for housing? I questioned. This is where the calm, collected conversation ended. My memory of the events is still scattered, but the main points are that he accused me of being crazy for thinking he wanted the money for selfish reasons. He insisted that I should just trust what he says. He expressed regret for ever meeting me and threatened to tarnish my reputation with our friends. He declared that our relationship was over, threw my keys at me, and attempted to punch a hole in the wall, unsuccessfully. At that point, I texted my dad for help, and he came to see what was happening. My boyfriend laughed and told both of us that he never wants to see us again before leaving. I know this account is rushed and may lack details, but everything happened so quickly and was incredibly stressful. I have tried to include all the important information, and if I am able to process my emotions and calm down in a few days, I will try to provide more information and answer any questions you may have. Please note that the conversation I recounted may appear cold and emotionless, but in reality, it was filled with emotions and other words. I have done my best to convey the events accurately. I am safe now as he cannot enter the premises since he threw his key at me. He is now my ex-boyfriend, and I will contact him later to arrange for the retrieval of his belongings. I do not know where he is staying, and I do not really care. After all the chaos and drama, it's clear that honesty and open communication are vital in any relationship. This experience shows that it is important to be upfront about important information, even if it may seem insignificant at the time. It's a reminder to always strive for understanding and empathy in our interactions with others. I never expected my mother to get married the weekend before me, but what followed was a series of shocking events that left me questioning her intentions. From secret rendezvous to stolen moments of affection, it became clear that she had a hidden agenda. As the tension reached its peak, I couldn't help but wonder, would my wedding be overshadowed by her betrayal? Here's how it all went down. I, 26 female, and my fiancé, 26 male, are getting married in 2 weeks. We have been engaged with our date set for over a year. My mom was the first person we called when we got engaged, and all she said was, "I'm sure I'm the last to know. You're probably sick of hearing congratulations by now." She flew out a couple of months later for our engagement party. I was outside with my friend when she stormed outside, past everyone else sobbing and wouldn't speak to me, except to yell at me to go back inside. Later, she told me she was just overwhelmed. Then she met her boyfriend. She told me he makes her feel so loved like my fiancé does for me. But she was also still seeing a few other people, mostly because her new boyfriend doesn't speak any English and my mom doesn't speak Spanish. They communicate through Google Translate. A few months later, my fiancé and I are in my hometown for a childhood friend's wedding. My mother was also invited and brought her boyfriend. I was in the wedding, so my fiancé was stuck next to them for the ceremony. He said they were affectionate throughout the whole time, and whenever they weren't, my mom was complaining. During the reception, if they weren't on the dance floor dancing closely, they were back at their table being affectionate. He even had his hand up her dress on several occasions. I brought up this behavior on the drive home, and she said, "He's Latin. He's just very passionate." While we were in town, my maid of honor, MOH, decided to throw us a wedding shower. I even made sure the bride whose wedding I was in was okay with it first. But it was a great chance for my fiancé to meet all of my friends, people I haven't seen since before the pandemic the last time I was there. My MOH tried to include my mom in the planning, and my mom said she would bring table decorations and tablecloths. She brought them and then immediately sat down and got on her phone. She didn't bother to even get the things out of the car. I asked her to frost cupcakes if she was just going to sit there while I set up the tables. She agreed, but complained about it the whole time. Once my friends started showing up, she completely ignored everyone and just sat in the corner on her phone. My fiancé went out of his way to try and include her in every conversation. She knew a lot of people there, girls I've been friends with since first grade, people I went to high school with, my MOH's parents, and she just ignored everyone. Then she complained to my fiancé that I wasn't spending time with her, even though I had set the day before our trip aside specifically to spend with her and my younger siblings. After returning from our trip, I discovered that I was pregnant. As usual, she was the first person I called because I knew she would be upset if I didn't. However, she didn't answer my calls, so I informed my dad and best friend instead. When I finally managed to reach her, she responded with a completely monotone voice saying, "Wow, congrats." It was the most emotionless tone I'd ever heard from her in my entire life. Towards the end of last month, both my mom and dad informed me that they weren't sure if they could afford to attend my wedding. It surprised me because the wedding date had been known for over a year, and I couldn't understand why they hadn't made travel and lodging arrangements in advance. Additionally, my mother had recently moved to be closer to her boyfriend's job. At that point, I was honestly fed up with her behavior, so I didn't mind if she didn't come to the wedding. I had made peace with that. However, she managed to work things out and called me this past week to tell me that she had purchased plane tickets for herself, my brother, and her boyfriend. Oh, and by the way, they were getting married just a week before my own wedding. Both my fiancé and I cannot comprehend how she could possibly think this is acceptable. She knows how much we've been looking forward to our wedding, and it feels like she never allows me to have anything for myself. She always needs to have a part of whatever I have. Now she's going to attend our wedding and announce to everyone that she just got married too. I have to warn our photographers not to engage with her, because I know she'll ask them to take pictures of her and her new husband. She's trying to make our wedding about her, without having to pay for any of it. It feels like she's jealous and wants to be me. I'm not sure if it's the pregnancy hormones, or if it's because of past trauma related to her. We have a long history of not getting along. But after this wedding, I never want to speak to her again. I will definitely be going no contact for at least a little while. I don't know if anyone will even read this lengthy message, but I desperately needed to get it off my chest. My wedding was truly the best day of my life. It was the best day ever, despite some issues with my family. Here's a brief rundown of what happened. I called my mom before her wedding and expressed my frustration that she chose to get married a week before me. She seemed to have already anticipated this conversation and explained that it wasn't intentional. My friend's mother attended my mom's wedding and reported back to us. Apparently, my mom complained about me throughout the event, saying that I was upset about nothing and forbidding her from talking about her own wedding. However, she had agreed to this arrangement during our phone conversation, assuring me that she didn't want to steal any attention from me. My entire family missed the rehearsal, which wouldn't have been a big deal if they had just listened to me when I explained the lineup multiple times. This caused some issues during the wedding, but my mother-in-law saved the day and set my mom straight. My mom attended the rehearsal dinner, and after I finished helping with the setup, she approached me and touched my stomach without permission, exclaiming hello to the baby. I politely asked her not to touch me without permission, which upset her. My mom refused to smile in any pictures where her husband wasn't present. My 14-year-old sister threw a fit about the food we served. Additionally, my dad missed our grand entrance and first dance because he left to get her Subway. It's a good thing I decided not to have a father-daughter dance, otherwise he would have missed that too. My whole family left early, which was fine because they all claimed to have early flights the next morning, preventing them from attending brunch. However, my mother lied to all of us and put my brother on an early morning flight so she and her husband could have a little honeymoon in New York City. We only found out because one of my bridesmaids and her family ran into them at the Statue of Liberty. My husband is angry because we would have let my brother stay with us longer, and because my mom lied to his mom's face about why they couldn't attend brunch. My mom has texted me, but I haven't responded and don't plan to. Despite all of these issues, none of it really matters to me. I'm married to my best friend, had my fairy tale wedding, and in about 4 months, we'll be welcoming a new baby into our lives. My mom texted me multiple times asking if I was mad at her. She also spammed me on Facebook, commenting on a post I made for my cat's birthday. I responded by saying that I was indeed upset for the reasons I listed earlier, especially the lying and sneaking around. However, she didn't address any of the important points I made. Instead, she tried to make me feel guilty and only acknowledge the parts she felt she could defend. I told her that I need some space and that we won't be speaking for a while. It's clear that the relationship between the OP and their mother is incredibly complex and filled with tension. The OP's wedding was meant to be a joyous occasion, but their mother's actions seem to overshadow the celebration. It's understandable that the author feels hurt and betrayed, and their decision to go no contact for a while is a valid way to protect their emotional well-being. It's a reminder that even in the midst of happy moments, family dynamics can sometimes be challenging and require careful navigation. My heart raced as I watched him abandon me on our date, choosing his best friend over me. Little did I know that this betrayal was only the beginning of a twisted web of secrets and obsessions. This is the story of how my perfect relationship unraveled, revealing a chilling truth that would change everything. Here's how it all went down. My boyfriend Andrew and I have been dating for 2 years. One of the main issues I have with him is his excessive attachment to his best friend Eddie. To be honest, their friendship seems more like Eddie being completely dependent on Andrew, similar to a needy child. This becomes problematic because Eddie and I don't get along. Since the day we met, he has been hostile towards me for no apparent reason. I am not the type of person who tolerates mistreatment, so naturally I respond with equal hostility. I'm also convinced that Eddie is in love with Andrew. Despite being unable to maintain a long-term relationship, anyone he dates bears a striking resemblance to Andrew. Additionally, he constantly touches Andrew and even displaces me from my seat so he can sit next to him. I find this behavior disrespectful, as it is inappropriate to openly express feelings for someone who's already in a committed relationship. However, Andrew seems to be willingly oblivious to this. Anyways, after several challenging weeks of work, I finally got a break and just wanted to relax at home. But Andrew insisted on taking me out to celebrate, specifically to the beach, despite knowing that I dislike it. So I was already a bit angry, but things got worse when he told me he had to keep his phone on because Eddie was meeting up with someone he met online, and Andrew was worried the person might be dangerous. I was shocked. Eddie is an adult and should be able to take care of himself. But I tried to be reasonable. That was a big mistake because, sure enough, after 2 hours, guess who calls? Eddie, asking Andrew to come and get him because he's scared for his safety. I was furious. How is it that a grown adult can't find their way home and has to rely on my boyfriend, who is 30 minutes away? Eddie could have called an Uber or asked the bar staff for help, but instead, he chose to ruin our date. I yelled at my boyfriend, but he didn't care, and immediately dropped everything to go to Eddie, leaving me stranded at a beach I didn't even want to be at. He practically sprinted to the car and left without a second thought, while I continued to rage at him. He didn't want to stress Eddie out even more because he knows we don't get along. I've decided to block him, and he can make a big gesture to win me back, or I'm done. Still, I'm not sure what to do. Even if he does take me back, how can I trust that he won't do this again? At the same time, aside from his strange friendship with Eddie, he's basically the perfect boyfriend. A few people accused me of being a narcissist and needing therapy, while others said the opposite, suggesting that Andrew was the one who needed therapy. Many people provided thoughtful and insightful advice, although their opinions differed. In the end, I decided to follow my instincts. I apologize for my toxic behavior towards the end. I became defensive when everyone reached the same conclusion, and initially I didn't want to accept it. However, that's no excuse. I want to thank those who took the time to advise me. I appreciate it. Although I blocked Andrew, we have some mutual friends who informed me that he desperately wanted to contact me, but would respect my decision if I said no. I chose to hear him out. I thought to myself, he has made mistakes, but if he establishes boundaries with Eddie and reaffirms his commitment to our relationship, we can work through it. Otherwise, it's over. I believed it would be immature to cut him off without having a mature discussion about our relationship. When we met, I noticed he appeared nervous, which immediately irritated me as something being wrong. I began by expressing my unhappiness with his constant prioritization of Eddie over me and his apparent lack of concern for my feelings. I also apologized for not being the best communicator, as I tended to respond with anger. He swore that he didn't know I disliked the beach, and if he had known, he wouldn't have suggested going there. I told him that we could still salvage our relationship if we both put in the effort, and he had a conversation with Eddie about appropriate boundaries in their friendship. However, that conversation never happened. He apologized for leading me on for 2 years, but explained that he couldn't, in good conscience, continue the relationship when Eddie still needed him. Despite the signs pointing in that direction, I wanted to confirm if he was in love with Eddie. The answer is complicated. To provide context, Andrew is an extremely helpful person, always willing to go above and beyond to assist others. This is especially apparent with Eddie. I had a suspicion that Eddie had some mental health issues, but I didn't realize the extent until Andrew shared that Eddie is severely depressed and has attempted self-harm in the past. Andrew was the one who intervened before it escalated, and he has felt an obsessive need to protect and care for Eddie ever since. In Andrew's words, Eddie's very fragile and needs him. He insists that nothing romantic has ever happened between them, including kissing or anything more, and I believe him. However, he considers Eddie to be the most important person in his life, both now and in the future. When we started our relationship, he believed he could have 2 most important people, but he recently realized that is not the case after 2 years. I asked him what would happen when he wants to start his own family, and he said he won't marry anyone or have kids because it wouldn't be fair to anyone involved, despite expressing his desire for a family in the past. It seems like that was a lie, or maybe he only wants a family with Eddie. I don't know. So yeah, Andrew is so obsessed with and dependent on Eddie that he is sacrificing the opportunity to have a family because of it. As for whether he's in love with Eddie, he claims to be straight but admits that he feels something different when he is around Eddie. However, as I write this, I realize it could be because they have a codependent relationship. I'm not completely convinced that he is romantically in love with Eddie, but rather he loves Eddie so much that he is willing to do anything for him. Then again, I could be wrong. To me, this situation is extremely unhealthy, but it's no longer my problem. He apologized and expressed regret for what he did to me. He seemed genuinely torn up about it, but it doesn't change the fact that 2 years of my life have been wasted. As a 32-year-old woman who dreams of having a large family, I currently don't have a partner, and it will take time for me to find one. While I'm still relatively young, time is ticking. He promised to set me up with someone as if that will make up for everything. I doubt he will follow through since it seems like he only cares about Eddie, or at least that's how it appears. You probably think I sound bitter and angry right now, and you're right, because I am bitter and angry. I can't muster a positive outlook at the moment. I know I should move on and let go of my anger towards him, but it has only been 2 days, so I won't be able to do that anytime soon. It's clear that relationships can be incredibly complex and sometimes reveal unexpected aspects of ourselves and our partners. It serves as a reminder to trust our instincts, communicate openly, and set healthy boundaries to ensure our own well-being and happiness. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.